Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Tracey Devlyn, and I'm here with New York Times bestseller Katy Hays to talk about her new atmospheric thriller, Saltwater. Welcome to the show, Katy.
Thank you so much for having me, Tracy.
Yeah, you bet. I'm delighted to have you here. I really enjoyed this book. I read your debut novel as well, The Cloisters, and this one did not disappoint. So congratulations on that.
Thank you so much. I feel like it's a little bit my middle child. The second
Uh,
book is always
yeah.
a beast to wrangle.
Yes. We can talk about that a little bit more about the sophomore book, as we like to call it in the writing community, right? Well, I just to start off with something a little bit lighthearted here. I noticed in your bio that you like to enjoy exploring the Eastern Sierras and other outdoor activities. Have you done anything fun like that lately?
I am under deadline for book three, so not lately,
No.
but I do. Behind me, literally less than a mile behind me, is the Palisades Tahoe ski area. I live in Tahoe, and so even if I'm on a book deadline, I'm usually out getting some cross country skiing or some downhill skiing. And so
Oh, great.
I've been skiing around home. We haven't been down the east side recently though.
Oh, nice. Do you still have snow there?
We have a lot of snow. In fact, I think we have about 3 feet in the forecast. March is a big snow month for us in Tahoe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess if you live there, you are a snow-loving creature, so it is no problem for you. For me, March, I'm like, bring out the spring flowers. I want to start feeling the warm sun again. I'm all about it.
I feel like we get the best of both worlds because it's still California. So come March, we have like today is absolutely gorgeous, but then you can kind of, enjoy the sun in the morning and go skiing in the afternoon. It's kind of a perfect.
Nice. Well, good. I'm glad you're having a good time there. And how much longer do you have before your third book is due?
About 10 days.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so you have book due plus you're doing promotion for book two, which is
I am
always a
in it.
joy,
Yeah.
isn't it? All right, great. Well, we will try to be very conscientious of time here. As I mentioned, Saltwater is your sophomore book, and you The Cloisters, as I mentioned, it was your debut, and it for what I noticed, it did quite well. So I know that following up with book two can be a little bit intimidating when those types of things. Well, actually, it's intimidating no matter your circumstance, I think, for most people. But can you give us a little bit of an overview of Saltwater and then maybe talk about a little about what it's like to write this book?
Yeah. So Saltwater, I've been saying, is the story of a family who has everything and the three women who will stop at nothing to escape them. And it's the story of the affluent Lingate family who, for every year, for 50 years, have been going to the island of Capri for a week in the summer to vacation. And in 1992, they witnessed a kind of iconic crime, an iconic tragedy when one of their family members is found dead below the cliffs of Capri. And although the event, the death is ruled an accident, they live under this shadow of suspicion for the ensuing 30 years. And when they go back to the island in 2022 or 2023, when the book is set, it happens again and another member of their party is found dead. And it's about the way in which the family unravels under the pressure of this second occurrence. And it is kind of I call it a literary suspense. It's a family drama. And for me, I was really interested in, I am as a writer, really interested in kind of what we're capable of believing as people, like what we can get talked into, whether it's a charismatic con man or tarot cards or manifesting. I'm fascinated by what people are capable of talking themselves into. And in this case, I was really interested in looking at the unit of the family as this cult you can't really leave, right? Like families are these kinds of almost cellular cults that exist around us and within us. And that was really what I was interested in looking at with saltwater.
Yeah, I really felt for Helen. Poor Helen. She was, as you said, she was just kind of stuck there. And I want to be very careful so I don't give away any spoilers and things like that. But yeah, I thought you did an amazing job feeling that kind of helping the reader feel that kind of claustrophobia that she endured. Not for 1 year, not for 5 years, for her entire life. What would that have been? Like 20, I know that the murder happened around in 30, like 30 years ago, but she was 3 or 4, I think, when it
Yeah,
happened.
I mean,
Yeah.
and I also think too, Tracy,
Ugh.
like you don't have to be a rich family to experience that kind of claustrophobic feeling
Mm.
around your family. I should say as like a caveat up front that I love my parents and I'm very close to my
Yeah.
family. So I don't want this to be read as some kind of like
Yeah,
trauma dump about my own
sure.
family. But I do think that even though this family has all the resources in the world, it is the kind of experience that everybody can relate to. Those kind of parental expectations, broader family expectations, how we are expected to perform certain ways, the
Yeah.
really invisible structures in a family that exist to keep us performing in that way was something
Hmm.
I was really interested in because it doesn't have to be as overt or as obvious as something like verbal or physical abuse. Families can enforce rules on you and expectations on you in a million ways without even involving money. And I think that was one of the things I was really interested in looking at in
Hmm.
this book.
Yeah, and it's you. I think you touched on it in the book too. It's they're family, so a lot of times, no matter what happens, you're going to go back to family, and you don't want to disappoint them, do you? So you end up doing things that maybe go against what you want to do for various reasons, and so yeah, I thought you captured it really well.
Thank you.
As you mentioned, this story, it does take place on the island of Capri, which is a completely different setting from your first book, which was, could I call it that, New York Academia, maybe, or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, why did you decide to have the story set on Capri? And did you get to indulge in a research trip?
Yeah, it's funny. I think as a reader and as a writer, I'm acutely aware of the fact that books take a long time to read. I'm not a fast reader. I look at some of these bookstagrammers who are reading a book every 2 days, and I don't know how they do it. I'm a pretty slow reader. And so for me, I want to be in a place in a book where I want to spend some time. And when you're writing a book, you're in that place for like a year at least. And so I always select the settings for my novels based on two criteria. One, where do I want to spend time? And two, what environment do I think will give me the most interesting way to tell this story? And for me, obviously, I knew that I wanted this kind of claustrophobic feel, but I wanted something that was equally kind of lavish. And the island of Capri was really interesting to me for several reasons. First, I had read many years ago, I'm an academic, kind of like a recovering academic in my day. And I had read a few years ago this great book called Pagan Light by, I think I'm gonna butcher it. It's like Jamie James, Jamie Johns, something, published by FSG. And it was all about the history of Capri, particularly the artistic and literary history of the island. And I'm a big fan of the novelist Shirley Hazard, and I'm also a big fan of the novelist Graham Greene. And they had spent many winters together on the island, and I had read their memoirs about the island. And I just had been holding it in the back of my mind as a place I wanted to set a book, but I didn't know what to put there and what kind of, was going to work in that environment in that context. And I had never been there. And so when I started working on this book, I knew it would be set there. But then of course I had to go and see if all of these things I'd read about the island, all these things I expected to find would actually work for the book. And so
Yeah.
my husband and I live in the mountains. I am a mountain person. I believe Kyle Richards on The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills once said, "You're either a beach person or a mountain person." And I am 100% a mountain person. So we were, yeah, thank
Me
you,
too. Me
Tracy.
too. Yeah.
We were actually in northern Italy hiking, and my husband was doing some skiing in the summer, which is a thing. And I said to him one evening, we were at dinner, I'm like, I think we have to go all the way down because we're here, we are, we're in Italy, we're in Europe, it's easy-ish. I was like, I think we have to go all the way down to Capri tomorrow and like get on a boat and go spend several days there. And my husband, who is even less of a beach person than I am, was such a champ. He drove us 8 hours in summer Italian traffic all the way from kind of the Dolomites to Sorrento, where we hopped on a ferry and went to Capri for a week. And when I got there, I felt like it was even better than what I had imagined. And
Uh,
so that aspect of it was really wonderful because, sometimes you set a book in a place and you go to the place the book is set for research and you have to change so much about the book, or the place doesn't provide for the story, for the narrative, for the plot in the way you hope. And instead, we got to Capri and I literally turned to him as we were walking to our hotel and was like, I couldn't have even made this up. It's so amazing. Like it was perfect.
wow.
And we had a great time. It's a very nocturnal island. It was so hot during the day, you couldn't do anything. So people kind of would go to dinner at 11 o'clock. You'd go to bed at like 3 in the morning. You'd sleep till noon. You'd like have a very late breakfast, go for a swim, and then, around 5 o'clock, you'd like go get a drink and start it over again. It was wonderful and wild and perfect for a
Yeah.
novel like this.
Yeah, yeah, that was some of the bits that I really really enjoyed about the story. Whenever you would talk about the island and those types of things where people came out at night and wouldn't get home until 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And what I found very interesting is that the island doesn't have any sandy beaches,
No.
and
None.
they
It's literally
and
just like tacked. It's like a cliff, a giant. I mean, the island is all cliff, and it's just
okay.
cement
Yeah.
has been poured into the Mediterranean to make beaches.
That's what I was actually trying to picture this cement pour beach, and I'm like, wow, and people really enjoy, like going out there and
Yeah.
just laying out. And so I guess if that's what you have, you adapt and enjoy it, I suppose.
It's funny too, because in Capri, all of those places have been turned into these very swanky beach clubs. But when I was younger, I was with my parents in Spain on the Costa Brava, where they also love cement beaches that have just been poured into the ocean. And those are not swanky and nice. And it was my first time. I'm in California and I grew up in California. We have sandy beaches, but cold water. And I had grown up with these kind of huge, expansive beaches. And we went to this beach place in Spain, and it was just a slab of concrete, and people loved it. And I felt it opened my eyes. I realized then that, traveling was a really wonderful experience.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we were in Bristol many, many years ago. And I found it very fascinating. Well, for one thing, it was cool. It was maybe in the 60s, 65, which is cool to me. And there were some people out in full-on bikini, swim trunks. They're in Bristol, England, and their beaches were like rocks, like not like pebbles, but I mean they were rocks. And I'm like, is that really comfortable? So I guess yeah, you just adapt to whatever you have because you love that environment and you want to be out in the sun and enjoy
You
the day
really
that way, I
do.
guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, after reading especially your second book here, I have silently dubbed you, well, not so silently because I'm telling the world here now, but I have silently dubbed you the Queen of Hints, where you you give these beautiful vague little references throughout the book that the reader isn't, they're not quite sure what they mean yet, but that, you know as a reader that it has great meaning or will later on in the book, and you just sparse those out like a pro. And I found that so fascinating because many authors, especially new authors, they feel this need to explain everything, right? But that wasn't the case with you and your writing. Your writing is it's like the perfect example of trust the reader. They'll kind of put it all together, whether they realize it or not. They'll put it all together, their little brains knitting it together as they read through it. And it's okay for them to just be like, what does this mean? At that particular point. Is that something that came natural to you? Is that something you had to work on in edits, or talk about that maybe?
It's a good question. So I should say, first of all, I am a huge reader of suspense. So I consume a ton of suspense fiction. I love it. Before I started reading it, before I started writing it, it was what I love to read. I kind of was given by my aunt. I turned 13 and my aunt gave me three Daphne du Maurier paperback novels for my 13th birthday. And it is to this day the most formative gift anyone has ever given me.
Yeah.
And I think that that kicked off in me this love of kind of a big mystery thriller. I like a literary suspense. That's kind of my favorite
Yeah.
read. And I think it's probably closer to what I write. But that has really been what I love to read. And I think through reading a lot of it, I've really intuited the way a lot of these writers can construct narrative. For me, though, a lot of that breadcrumbing and that seeding of the story happens in two different ways. First, I never know where a book is going when I start it. I don't ever start a book knowing what the twist is going to be. I don't know kind of what the big set pieces in the novel are going to be. I usually start with a question. And in the case of Saltwater, the question is, what if this family keeps going back to this place on vacation
Mhm.
where this terrible thing happened? And what if they are literally haunted by this event? And what would that haunting look like? And how would that manifest itself? And I just start with a question and I begin to write the book. And in some cases, in the drafting of the novel, will leave a breadcrumb for myself that I don't even know is a breadcrumb until I get to the end. Like I will, you
Yeah.
know, have a character set something down in one chapter or notice something in a chapter. And then at the end of the novel, I realize that I've left it for myself in the narrative to pick back up. And those are great moments. Those are,
Those are like amazing gems for
yes,
writers, aren't they? It's like, oh, that's why I wrote
yes.
that.
And those I feel like are magical. But then there are also a lot of non-magical breadcrumbs that happen for me. I'm a really big in-depth reviser because I don't ever know where a novel's going. It means a lot of my books come together in revision. And I'm very comfortable revising and less comfortable drafting as a writer. And so
Mhm.
for me, a lot of that work comes in the time spent with the book, spent with the characters, the story, and I can kind of see where I need threads to be pulled through, where they're missing. And I do think for me, there is something instinctual about it. I think a lot of writers feel that way. But that doesn't mean that you don't sometimes have to step back from the manuscript and say, all right, if this comes at the end, nobody's going to know it's there. So how are we going to meet that information out in a way
Yeah.
that makes
Yeah.
sense for the reader?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I do love those little gems when they happen. They don't happen in every book, but they
No.
do happen, and it's just amazing. It's just like, wow, I'm really smart. You know?
Yeah.
And it probably has nothing to do with intelligence. It's just like, okay, you just throw that down and then your brain's working on it for several chapters and it finds a place to make it all work in. I don't know. It's an
And
amazing
it's so
organ.
rare as a writer to have that moment where you feel like you're a genius. Like most
I
of the
know.
time as a writer, you're just like beating
Yes.
your head against the table. Like, this
Yes.
is garbage. What am I doing? I'm wasting my life. So when you
I
do
know.
have those moments, you have to like really hold
Celebrate.
to
Yeah.
that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. Uh, Katie, what do you hope readers think about, really long after they close the covers of Saltwater? Is there anything that you hope that we hang on to?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. Okay, I don't want to spoil the book, but the first thing I want readers to come away feeling from the novel is that the twists at the end are earned. I am aware that these are some pretty big swing twists, but I feel like the work is there in the novel to make them work. And
Yeah.
I think for me, that's my number one is I want the readers to come away from those twists instead of just throwing the book across the room and being, I don't believe it. I wanted them to think, oh my gosh, of course, this
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
always what was going to happen.
Right.
And
Right.
then the other thing is, I really am interested in this idea of the family as the cult. And I am also really interested, as I said earlier, in what we're capable of believing and the fallibility of vision. So for me, I'm really interested in the fact that you can look at something, but not see it for what it really is, whether that's a loved one or you get up late at night and you hear a weird noise in your house and you walk downstairs and you see like the coat you hung up and you think, oh my God, someone's in my house, but really it's a coat, right? And we all have these
Hmm.
moments in our lives where our vision fails us, where we think we're seeing the thing for what it is, but we're really not. And this is something I'm really interested in, which sounds sort of lame and boring, but I'm philosophically interested in this as a writer. And so I hope readers come away from this novel thinking about in their day-to-day lives when they see things, are they really seeing what they think they're perceiving, or is there something else there? Are they missing something? Because I think there's a way in which, especially in something like suspense fiction, you can't always, we know all about unreliable narrators, right? But I'm really interested in what happens when our actual vision is unreliable. And I think maybe part of that is because I have a background as an academic in art history, which is really fundamentally based on the act of looking. And
Hmm.
artists are very interested in looking and recreating and transforming. And so I've always just been fascinated by whether or not we can believe what we see. And this book is very much about that.
I love that. That's great. And there was no throwing the book up against the wall when I finished it. So I think
Tracy,
you're
I
going to
have
be
to tell
okay.
you, when I was waiting, obviously we sent the book out for trade reviews. We were waiting for trade reviews. And I had spent months being like, Kirkus is gonna hate this book because of the twist. Kirkus is gonna be like, the twists are trash. This book is garbage. And then my Kirkus review came in and it was very positive and it said the twists were earned. And I was just like, yes,
Yes.
I did
Yeah.
it.
Great. Well, you had mentioned that you're a big reader. Is there any other suspensey type books that you've read lately that you could share with us?
Yeah, sorry, I just am coughing a little bit here. So I try really hard when I'm working in a book not to read anything published after 2005,
Okay.
just because I don't like to read contemporary fiction when I'm drafting. I like read all the contemporary fiction when I can when I'm not drafting. And I have been reading for the second time, and it's even better on the reread. I have been reading Jennifer Egan's The Keep, which is a lesser known novel of hers. And it is very, very weird. And it is about a man who goes to join his cousin or his uncle, a family member, in an unnamed castle in an unnamed Eastern European country, but that feels like some kind of magical Transylvania. And it's all about how the things happening in this castle are not as they seem. And
Uh,
it is wonderful. Jennifer Egan's writing, of course, is like incredible. This book is incredible. And I feel like a lot of people read A Visit from the Goon Squad and don't go any earlier. And I am here to wholeheartedly recommend.
All right, great. Well, thank you for that. Katie, before we go, can you tell us what's up next for you? Do you have any fun projects that you can talk about? on the
Yeah, I
horizon?
have a third book that's due really soon. I am not ready to pitch it, but I will say it is set on the Northern California coast in a town where everything is perfect and all the children are high achieving and all of the small businesses are thriving. And they only manage to function in that way because of a very calculated sacrifice. And
Okay.
I am kind of working on that right now. It's a little horror. I'd say it's horror light, horror adjacent. And I'm looking forward to it. It's got big coastal California vibes. And, yeah, that's what
All
I'm
right.
on right
Great.
now.
Well, I think you did a great job pitching it right there. So
Oh, thanks,
you got a nice
Tracey.
jump
First
start on
time.
that. All right, wonderful. So we might see that maybe in tw early 26, you think?
I think it's scheduled for 27, but we'll see how quickly I finish it.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right, great. Well, we will wait for it with great anticipation. So thank you for that. All right, folks. When this episode airs, Saltwater will be out, so be sure to order your copy today. You can check out Katy's website at katyhays.com. Katy, what social media outlets are you the most active on?
I am only on Instagram. I don't do anything else. And I am on Instagram at Hey, Hey, Katy Hays, Hays.
Oh, great.
That is my handle. Yes.
All right, wonderful. Well, thanks a ton, Katy. Congratulations on your sophomore book.
Thank
It
you
was,
so much for having me, Tracey.
yeah, you bet. It was such a pleasure talking to you. I really appreciate you taking the time to spend with us here today.
Yeah, thank you so much. I had a great time. I hope you have a good weekend.
Oh, yeah, you betcha. You too. Many thanks to everyone listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I'll be back soon with another suspensey read. Enjoy the adventure, everyone.